The Overwatch 2 closed beta Mark 1 is officially over. Throughout this time, we've seen some highs and some lows. In this video, I'm going to give my honest review of the Overwatch 2 closed beta. Trust me when I say that I am not holding anything back. There's a lot to say, so let's get started, shall we? This video is going to be separated into two different subjects, the good and the bad. The first thing I want to bring up before getting started, though, is that I don't think it's fair to definitively say that this game has no chance of succeeding, or on the other hand, that it'll be reviving the franchise. It's a closed beta, the first of multiple for that matter. Try to remember this is not a finalized product. That said, there's reasons to feel excited and or concerned based on what we've seen. Let's start with the good. This multiplayer beta definitely showed some differences in gameplay compared to Overwatch 1. Is it similar? Yes, of course, but for hardcore players, it had the same fundamental feeling, but with good quality of life changes. The most significant factor would be the subtraction of one player, aka the second tank. While initially skeptical of how this would turn out, I myself believe Blizzard made the right choice moving to 5v5. The game feels so much less oppressing in a way. Both DPS and support feel like they can do more now that there's less tanks constantly in their faces. It opens up a world where making big plays and feeling enable comes a lot more often. Any DPS player out there is going to tell you that it felt a lot easier to go on the flank or get big value without having a Winston and Diva jump on your face 24/7. If that wasn't enough, you're not shooting barriers so much. You're not shooting them 24/7 like with the double barrier meta. That's dead. It can no longer be a thing, which makes them easier to deal with these days. It's less of a brainless shield shooting simulator, and it's more of a, well, opportunity to make some actual plays and feel like you're doing something. The idea of double tank synergy being gone is sad for sure, but it was a necessary sacrifice if it means we get to see such quality of life improvements. It opened up a brand new way to play the game, which is obviously something Overwatch desperately needed. By getting rid of one tank, the game becomes slightly easier to follow. It's maybe a bit less chaotic in some aspects, and that in turn makes it more enjoyable for spectators as well. Additionally, the pace of play has increased tremendously. Fights are happening faster. There's less bodies to worry about, accompanied by less regrouping, so you see even more action throughout any given map. Overwatch 1, especially towards its end days, had some pretty dull moments. Now things are more chaotic. The change of pace makes Overwatch feel a bit more like an FPS game, so to speak. And I need not remind any of you that this is when Overwatch is at its peak. That is when this franchise is enjoyable. When it first came out back in the day, we're getting the same types of vibes again. The game has gone back to its roots, leading to a lot of familiar faces making the return to try the game out for themselves. Overwatch 2 is appealing to a larger audience with these types of style changes. It may not seem like much has changed on the surface, but many fans of the franchise who have played this game consistently throughout the years will tell you that 5v5 feels pretty good. But of course, that is far from the only thing that makes the multiplayer more enjoyable compared to what we're dealing with in the present with Overwatch 1. A huge turnoff in Overwatch 1 was the amount of crowd control and general things that completely screw you over. So Blizzard went ahead and finally addressed this, it would seem. They removed Cassidy's flashbang and replaced it with a powerful sticky bomb. They removed Brigitte's shield bash stun, which makes her a lot less annoying, and think about the crazy changes they made to Mei. There's only a select few ways to truly stun someone currently, which makes those characters more valuable and unique. This is especially the case since a lot of the CC still left in the game is more so skill-based. If you can hit a big Earth Shatter, Accretion, or Clutch Sleep Dart, it's more of a game changer than ever before. You're being rewarded more for your mechanics and game sense rather than playing the game mindlessly. On the topic of being rewarded, let's talk about some of the awesome changes that happened with each character archetype. At tank, it genuinely feels like this role is playable again. It has new life. The last year of Overwatch 1 saw absolutely nobody having the desire to play this garbage role. The most effective characters were very boring to play, and the only way to survive outside of like a double shield meta was to play Roadhog or Wrecking Ball, and they're just not as fun as like your Zaryas and Reinhardts of the world. But now the role feels a lot better, and there's a lot more options you can run. Less CC and more heals focused on just you as the only tank gives gives tank players more room to actually feel like they can play the game rather than cowering in fear. The fact that every tank hero has reduced knockback for a passive is pretty awesome as well, and most of the tanks in the game just feel good to play. Reinhardt feels a lot less clunky now that he has charge control, and he can cancel it when he wants to. He's got 2 fire strikes. It's amazing. And how about Winston? He doesn't get blown up every 2 seconds, his bubble has a lot more value, and he's got range now. Then you have Orisa, who is actually fun to play now. Her new kit makes her incredibly engaging, even if she's not necessarily the best tank in the game. Most of the player base are average anyway, so it's really not a problem if you look at the game as a whole and how much fun you can have. I mean, who doesn't want to lob spears at people or have your spear twirl as you push someone off the map? She's just so much more epic now. Then finally, we have the newest addition to the tank role being Doomfist. From a niche DPS to a pretty awesome tank. His movement is cooler than ever, and he's not a throw pick anymore. What's better than that? It gives Doom mains and tank players a way to rejoice in unison, because guess what? Doom is pretty darn fun. Tank in general can carry pretty hard, and the experience as a whole is just way less miserable. Don't take my word for it either. It went from the fastest queue time in the game, like being 2 minutes or less, to the longest in the beta. They fixed one of the worst problems in the game, which not only makes tank mains happy, but also everyone else, since people aren't just insta-locking Roadhog anymore. Tank feels the best it has since GOATS, and I truly do believe that it's more enjoyable than ever. Now we can move on to the big thing that truly makes Overwatch feel FPS-like, hence how it should. DPS. This role feels very similar, but also different at the same time. Aside from like Sombra and Bastion getting some cool changes for some fun new content, you also have the fact that all DPS heroes are 10% faster with their movement now. The roster as a whole generally feels the same, but the small changes they made make damage feel a lot more impactful. With less tanks and shields to shoot at, you're getting rewarded a lot more for having good mechanics and game sense and all of that good stuff. Some characters who were long since forgotten have made their way back into the spotlight. Genji and Soldier 76 are useful again. Their damage is a million times more consistent, and they're generally seen as non-throw picks these days. You can actually use Dragon Blade without fearing for your life or needing a nano boost to go along with it. And don't even get me started with how awesome Soldier is. He's been dominating the professional meta like it's 2016 again. Tactical Visor isn't a total waste anymore. It's not some random cleanup ult. You can get kills with it. And it goes beyond these two, right? A lot of the fan favorites are effective again, especially for taking into account the average skill level of the player base. This role feels the best it has in quite some time. If you're a former DPS man who has been thinking about giving Overwatch 2 a chance later down the road, I promise you're going to have some fun. Even if it's only temporary, I guarantee you will enjoy yourself. DPS generally might be the most heavily emphasized role in the game currently. The carry potential is through the roof. There's more room for you to pull off individual heroics or execute fun combos with your friends. The quality of this role has increased dramatically. And just to make DPS even more exciting, we have the addition of the franchise's first new hero since Echo in April 2020. And oh baby, is Sojourn a lot of fun. She is by no means the best damage dealer in the game, but she feels really good. She's a very unique hero. Her design feels like a combination, at least to me, of an Apex Legends and Destiny character who still manages to feel like she belongs in the Overwatch universe. Her movement is fun, and her skill gap is crazy high. Her railgun is hit scan, while her primary fire is projectile. You have to be very skillful at DPS as a whole to find value on her. Your aim has to be precise, to say the least. And that gets into part 2 as to why she's so enjoyable. Hitting your shots on Sojourn is one of the most satisfying things in the game. In my opinion, out of all DPS heroes, she is the second most mechanically rewarding, only behind Widowmaker. If you hit your shots, you dominate. But unlike Widowmaker, she has a lot more to her kit, making her more engaging overall. Sojourn is a fantastic addition to this game. I'm complete garbage with her personally, and I still found her to be quite interesting. New heroes are part of what made this game so exciting back in the day. New additions drive people back. It gives them something to talk about. Building upon this universe only benefits Blizzard in the long run. So DPS and tank feel pretty awesome, right? But what about support? Well, it's commonly agreed that support mains got the short end of the stick. However, they still did get a nice passive change at the very least. The ability to regain health over time for any support character feels super nice. And the fact that you have additional ways to stack it and heal up even quicker makes playing solo queue way less frustrating. Nothing felt worse in Overwatch 1 than getting paired up with unreliable teammates as a support main. Being low on health was a death wish. It felt awful to have that oblivious second healer by your side failing to top you up, or a stubborn tank that just would not protect you. But now the chances of you staying alive in crucial fights without any assistance go dramatically up. You can do things by yourself just by taking cover with good positioning and map awareness. It makes the whole experience a bit less frustrating, and it makes playing with your brain feel more rewarding. Between no new characters and very few changes to the current roster, lots of people had no desire to queue for this role during the beta, and it's totally understandable. The role maybe felt a bit underwhelming and less dominant compared to DPS and tank on the surface. However, it's nowhere near as bad as people make it out to be, especially if you're someone who actually gave the role a try for a while. You'd realize that you mostly attribute the frustration to a lack of new stuff rather than the role feeling unfulfilling. You can still make a huge difference on support. It takes a bit of adjusting to get used to it. That's all it really is. You've got to adapt and change how you approach the game. You've got to realize that there's less shields to hide behind, and that there's less tanks to protect you in general, and that DPS can chase you down a lot easier. Once you come to these realizations, it becomes a lot easier to feel like you're doing something as you adjust your style. Beloved supports such as Ana and Lucio are extremely fun. Lucio's combined passives just make him super difficult to kill, and then Ana's cooldowns, they're simply more crucial than they've ever been in the past. With less BS to screw you over, connecting sleep darts and biotic grenades are a driving force in winning fights even more now, and that only scratches the surface with supports. The other characters can do a lot too, they can feel just as rewarding. With the slower ult charge rate, a well-timed support ult could be a huge hit of dopamine as you constantly end up saving your team and coming up big. Support is still very fun, and over time I strongly believe that more people will realize this and eventually come back to the role. You just gotta accept change and put in some effort. Speaking of putting in effort, it was cool to see Blizzard finally give us a new map type. Push was introduced to the public, and it generally has a different feel compared to the fundamental game modes of the past. Push really emphasizes the idea of increased pace. Fights and skirmishes happen constantly with very little downtime. Combine the fact that it's a pretty short game mode overall, with that timer being less than like 10 minutes, it's the ideal map type for the players who are just trying to have some fun. It's really good casually, and I'm pretty sure that over time it could become better competitively if they make some changes. You can squeeze in a lot of fights and cool plays in a short amount of time. There's a lot of different positions and approaches to take, and because only one person is required to push the bot to make it go at max speed, aggressive positioning and strategy are very much present still. It's one of the only situations where it's maybe not a terrible idea to move forward and take up some aggressive positioning and continue to fire at the enemies at their spawn. It can be really exhausting, as it seems like in a close game, you're constantly trading back and forth in fights, no one's dominating, so when you come out on top, oh man, it hits different. It's by no means a perfect game mode like I was just saying before, but it feels different, and I think that's what truly matters. Different is the thing that this game desperately needs. The feelings are undoubtedly mixed when it comes to if it's more enjoyable than 2CP, let's say, but I for one find it to be a lot of fun. It's unique, and it can be way less frustrating, especially if it's a close game. At the highest level of play, where coordination is good, 2CP can be awesome, but for the average player who doesn't really have the coordination skills or they don't play on a team, it can be a nightmare to even get through the choke. It's miserable. Think about all of the complaints we've gotten throughout the years, you know? The dread of queuing into the worst 2CP maps can be avoided altogether. And regardless if you're a 2CP supporter or not, you can't change the fact that these map types were so bad that Blizzard had no idea how to fix some of them, and they just completely took them out of the game, aka Paris and Horizon Lunar Colony. In the long run, for the general player base, moving to Push could be for the better. On to another smaller change that I honestly really appreciated, and that would be the scoreboard. It could use some more advanced stats still, but seeing how everyone is doing firsthand is great. No need to ask what gold damage is. You can see for yourself if somebody's letting you down, or if you're letting your team down for that matter. Could this lead to a lot more trash talk as everybody can see the stats? Absolutely. From a positive perspective though, it allows for better communication. we aren't doing enough damage, our supports are getting picked on too much, look how many times they've died, and so on and so forth. It even gives a better idea of who might be the most problematic enemy that you should be looking to focus on. The new scoreboard provides useful information, so it's a welcome addition all in all. To wrap up the good, the Overwatch 2 closed beta was well received at the start. You could feel the hype again. It really felt good to see a lot of old streamers come back to give the game a try. And giving fans the incentive to watch streams to get beta access led to the best viewership in the game's history. There was so much well-needed positivity within the community, and you could truly feel the collective happiness of the group. And what's great is, the devs made it even better by truly listening this time around and actively making changes as time goes on, rather than ignoring us the way they've done for years. Balance changes and giving characters new features is a frustrated fan's dream come true. So far, they're delivering on their promise, and I can only hope that it continues for many, many months to come. So the first Overwatch 2 multiplayer beta brought a breath of fresh air to the loyal player base. The game is still complex, but the simplicity has increased a lot. Overwatch was arguably the most fun back in the day when things were dumbed down. Back when there wasn't a lot going on, back when people were learning. The beta showed firsthand that, in some instances, we're very much heading in that direction again. For the first few weeks that it was up, it was a time for celebration. Overwatch 2 has so much potential, and I genuinely believe that this game could see a small resurgence if things go well. However, this beta was far from perfect, which now gets me into the bad. So for starters, imperfections are to be expected, right? It's a closed beta, it's not a complete product. But some complaints that were seen on the internet were absolutely warranted. Like I mentioned before, healers became far less popular, especially during the first couple of days. Support mains straight up had low interest in their own role, myself included. Regardless of needing to go through an adjustment period, it still got way less attention than tank or DPS. It's cool that the devs recognized this midway through and they did make changes and the queue times did become a bit better, but they were still lopsided even at the end. The next issue came through Overwatch 2 simply feeling too much like the original thing. For the hardcore player base, this was absolutely fine. They don't need a ton of ridiculous changes. They wanted the same fundamentals but with better gameplay. However, for those who quit the game years ago or play the game casually and were thinking about trying Overwatch for the first time even, it may not feel desirable. Content creators and former players alike address their displeasure, and it's clear that a lot of people agree. And who could blame them? This game has been in development for years. It's understandable to expect more from a sequel. A lot of people argue they should have made this an expansion for Overwatch 1 rather than a new game. And that is a problem. If Blizzard wants to revive this franchise, the appeal needs to be as wide as humanly possible. I get the criticism, but I personally do think that some people were expecting maybe a bit too much. Yeah, I get it, after 2+ years you want significant changes, but it's clear what the goal is with this expansion, at least in my opinion. It's more so about appealing to the casual audience. The multiplayer is not the complete focus. In my opinion, the selling point is PvE if we're talking about getting general gamers to play this game rather than just the competitive FPS players. I mean, that's the big reason they decided to make an Overwatch 2 to begin with. They saw all the people that were interested in the universe, so they wanted to capitalize on that. The goal is to expand this beloved universe with more stories and engaging PvE gameplay. Not everybody's into PvE. In fact, I'd say most of you watching this video, as well as a lot of the online personalities out there, are mostly interested in the PvP. However, there are millions upon millions of fans out there who like the franchise casually. They're into the characters, the world building, and just playing the game from a very casual point of view, not competitively. I can already tell a lot of people are going to call me dumb for saying this, but the fact of the matter is, this game has a ridiculously large casual audience who probably don't even give social media the time of day. Don't get me wrong, the quality of PvP is very important, and there definitely are some things that can be done to make the player base happier in that regard, but the PvE and story aspect might be even more important. They need to deliver on the thing that incentivized a sequel to begin with. If PvE gets you closer to the world and is something you can grind for hours, you're going to see an uptick in popularity. I almost guarantee it. But the fact that we still haven't gotten the chance to play any of this important game mode is disappointing to say the least. A multiplayer beta is fantastic, but the hype quickly is going to fade away since the game is still fundamentally the same. The proof is in the numbers and complaints, right? At first the beta was very hype, but after everybody checked it out, people realized it's a bit too much like the original Overwatch 1 beta. Look what happened after the first few days on Twitch. From 1 million viewers to 100k like a few days later, to even worse numbers by the time the beta ended than we had with pre-beta viewership. But why is it that these numbers went down aside from the game feeling the same? It goes back to what I mentioned a few moments ago. Despite learning so much and having great capabilities on what you could run to get the crowd excited, the game was too restricted. We only had quick play to work with, which was fun at first and all, but people want to play ranked. That's part of the reason that competitive gamers and streamers alike were hoping Overwatch 2 would hit it off. They're looking to start the grind all over again in a fresh and fun experience, and it's clear that viewers want the same thing. You think people want to sit there for hours upon hours and watch quick play these days? We literally had streamers going back to Overwatch 1 because they wanted to play ranked. That, my friends, is a terrible look. The beta you have been working so hard on was ditched for your older, less exciting game. The amount of features aren't limited like the infancy of your franchise. You can add what you've already made. It's not some sort of impossible task. And because they refuse to use already available features from their previous game, tons of creators have come out and said that this game doesn't feel the same. At first, I thought it was maybe a bit silly that people were complaining about the lack of a ranked game mode. It's a closed beta meant for testing is what I thought. But the more you think about it, the more you start to realize this could have enhanced the experience and potentially helped retain at least a little bit of that viewership. It's okay if there's problems. It's a beta. This is the time to mess up. That's what testing is for. Why keep people from having extra motivation to play or spectate the game? Lack of time is not an excuse. If you didn't feel ready, you should have waited longer. Most people would not care at this point, seeing as it took an eternity for this beta to come out, and that's not where it ends. Some people might argue that only one hero after all this time is a bit of a letdown. Think about how many heroes we had in the Overwatch 1 open beta. Sojourn is great, but just having her at the start means there's even less exploring to do, and it gets even worse when considering that the map pool is also small. The new maps are all great, and I can appreciate their effort to change some maps from night to day and vice versa. But come on, man. I'm sure they could have put some of the other original maps in the game, no problem. You don't even have to put the changed versions of them in either. Just throw in any of them, you know? It doesn't have to be the revised version. You need more variety so people don't get bored. All these factors just give the public more of a reason to speedrun the beta than potentially never look back. Regardless of if it's a beta or not, you need to deliver big for something that's years in the making. Betas are meant to give you a taste that has you begging for more by the time it ends. You need as much content as possible. If you fail to make a good first impression, you're setting yourself up for failure. The fact of the matter is, the Overwatch 2 PvP closed beta was not overly impressive. Did it feel better than Overwatch 1? Yeah, I think it did. Was it enough to truly pique the interest of the general public? The quick and apparent fall off would suggest no. People were curious to check this game out, but once they saw the little content combined with how similar this game was to the original, that was the end. The gameplay itself ain't bad, but we're a long way off from people outside this hardcore community bubble feeling satisfied. Overwatch 2 in its current form doesn't give off that same magic as the old days when the game first came onto the scene with its original betas. I enjoyed my time, I admit it, but compared to the original pure addiction of the original beta, it doesn't compare. When Overwatch was new, I literally could not stop playing it. Like, it'd be all I'd think about while I was at school sitting there bored. Meanwhile, the Overwatch 2 high started to die maybe after a week or so. There was so much to explore in that original beta, and this just didn't have it. There were aspects that reawakened my love for sure, but without the additional content and hype from gamers worldwide, it was hard to stay as engaged as I would have liked to. As an Overwatch fanboy, it pains my heart to say such a thing, but it's the truth whether I like it or not. Will people even care when the full game comes out? It's difficult to stay optimistic during these trying times. Blizzard has to find a way to make the competitive gamers happy, but also do a better job of attracting the more casual audience at the same time. The next beta needs to give us more, and it would be nice to know what their plans are regarding any other betas, and the full game for that matter. How many new maps are we getting? Are we getting any new heroes anytime soon? How expansive will the PvE and story be for the Overwatch universe? How many hours can I expect to stay engaged with said story? Will there be a battle pass system? More skins? More lore? New events that don't get cycled every goddamn year? More stuff for the workshop mode? Are we going to have cinematics to build upon the hype? Despite finally getting a crumb of something new, we're still left with more questions than answers. Outsiders are laughing at us as we struggle to survive. This might have been the first beta of many, but the ship has been sinking for years. A small taste of new content is not going to change that. Part of me thinks the beta should have just stayed up, because it's clear that at this point, nobody wants to go back. To sum it up, the Overwatch 2 closed beta had some good and some bad. The game itself feels nice and it clearly gave the community a few moments to feel happy again. But at the same time, a lot of mistakes were made to the point where fans are questioning if there's even a chance for a comeback. Because it's only a closed beta, I'm going to remain hopeful. There's a lot of complaints throughout this video, I recognize that, but there's still a lot of time for improvement and I think that's important to note. As we've been saying for years now, if Blizzard can make a serious effort and really listen to the players, things can get better. But until that day comes, all we can do is keep the hope alive, and sadly, the skepticism and worries will never cease. I've rambled on long enough though. That is my honest review of the Overwatch 2 closed multiplayer beta. There's a lot to digest here, and I really do appreciate all of you who listened from start to finish. And I'd like to hear from your point of view. What are your thoughts on the beta? Is there any hope for it at this point, or are we absolutely screwed? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed today's video and you want more Overwatch discussion content just like this, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to my channel. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate your support a lot. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.